So tell me what you're seeing.
I got your screen.
You're seeing the TEI President's Forum slide?
Yep.
But not this black slide that I'm seeing?
Nope.
Good.
It must be in presenter view.
And I'm going to do something there. I got to put my speaker view over here. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We've got about 22 people on the line right now, and we're going to be starting in about 5 more minutes.
Hey, Brandon, is that a virtual background of your own office? You're on mute.
It is a virtual background of my own office.
Sharp.
You like it?
I like your home office with the map on the background.
The map on the background is a good here you go. It is a good background. But I don't know. For webinars like this, I like the Go Brand Go values in the background. It allows me to refer to them.
I'm still stuck in my wooded cabin.
Knotty Pine.
Tom, is that a workout room?
It's a workout room / office. So that side is workout, this side is office.
Okay, people continue. We have 22 attendees and 6 panelists on the call right now in the webinar, and waiting for 5 more minutes to let anyone else get in, and then we'll be off to the races. Again, welcome everybody. We're going to start in about 3 minutes. We have 26 attendees and 6 panelists. Bear with us as we let the other attendees jump in on this.
Okay, Mike, I have about 3 after. Are you ready to kind of get things going?
Let's give it just one more minute. My watch says, yeah, 9:04.
Okay.
And welcome everybody. And I see people are jumping in that chat room. So please do that and try to network as best you can there in the chat room. Say hi to each other if you know each other. And we're going to get started. Bob, why don't you get us started then?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Welcome to everybody. So glad that you're with us this morning. I think we've got a great group of panelists and a ton of content to get to this morning. So we're going to work through it quickly. We're going to get to as many questions as you have. So throw those in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen. And this is the second webinar that the Entrepreneurship Institute St. Louis chapter has put together. Obviously, I think a large number of you were at our quote unquote live Presidents of Forum back in February. And then we all know what happened after that shortly. So we quickly shifted to virtual, as many of you all did too. Did one webinar. This is the second one. Our hope, and I say that with a lot of hope in my voice, is that we'll be live again here before the end of the year with a breakfast event, and then kick off things again with our next President's Forum in 2021. And we already have, I think we're working on finalizing a date for that. So fingers crossed really hard that everything is going to pursue that way. If not, we'll keep going virtual, but I know that there's tremendous value in meeting face-to-face again when it's safe to do so. You know, Mike said network as you can here in the chat. It's just, I think we can all agree it's not the same. So we're happy that you're all here. I'm happy that you're all here. And I want to give thanks to all of our sponsors here listed on this slide. We couldn't do what we do at the Entrepreneurship Institute without them and their support day in and day out, especially through these unprecedented times. So that's all I've got for that. I'm going to kick things back over to Mr. Sink, who's going to facilitate this morning. And thanks very much, Mike.
Thanks, Bob. Let's go to the next slide. The shape of things to come. And that caught my attention. I sat in a webinar with a bunch of my cohort Gravitas coaches from around the world. And guess what? Some of these countries are further ahead than we are in dealing with the pandemic. And as a result, we can peek around the corner at what's happening in some of those markets to kind of get an idea of what's going to happen here in St. Louis. So it's kind of like the shape of things to come. Apparently that title is from some TV show that I don't know what it is, but I like the picture and that's it. The idea, the question is, what's the shape of things to come? What is your growth curve going to look like? A little bit about myself. I'm a Gravitas coach, and you know, the way I work with people is you guys as business owners have expertise and passion, and that took you to where you are right now. But you have to figure out or fix things that take you to the next step. And I work as a coach to tag team your experience and passion with my expertise in sorting out your next step. And think about what your starting point might be, whether you work with me or someone else. Rather quickly, the things that Gravitas coaches work on: leadership, strategy, talent, execution, customers, profit, and systems. But enough about me. Let's move on. This is what we're dealing with. This is a military term, VUCA, and at military leadership schools around the world, this concept is taught. When you enter a situation, you have to evaluate the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity, because that's what you're dealing with. And this webinar I went to talked about this and said, what are CEOs thinking about as they face VUCA? And these are the questions. What is happening to the economy and how do I fit in that? And we're going to talk about some things called V, U, and L curves that appear to be presenting in down under in the land of the Kiwis and the Aussies. What's happening to my industry? Is it going to survive? Is it going to thrive? Is my company safe for now? How is my company positioned for the future? How do I lead in a VUCA world? How do I find clarity in this world? So we're going to start with taking a look at the hammer and the dance real briefly. Hopefully you all are familiar with this, but this kind of tracks the pandemic, which is driving most of economic activity right now. And first there was do nothing, then there was mitigation, and then the hammer came down. And efforts by governments and states to get a handle on this, and then they're moving into the dance. They've got a handle on it, they're keeping it down, they're trying to keep the rate of incidents less than 1%, and that's been the intent of all of that. And that's where we are right now, is we're in the dance phase of this. And that's just something you've got to keep in your mind. Now, I've asked Tom Swip with Swip Systems, one of our panelists, to talk about what you need to be watching on the pandemic to make sure you can be stronger. So Tom, jump in here and walk people through this.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us today. It's good to be here with the group here, and hopefully we'll be able to spread some goodwill and some good information here. For this whole presentation today, what I want to make sure that everybody does is on the top line there, focus on how you're going to come back stronger than before the virus. So that's really what this is all about, is not only coming out of this, but coming back stronger and being able to support the economy even more. As all of you have seen over the last week, or many of you may have seen that over the last week, we have seen an increase in spikes in certain cities and things like that. So it's going to be real important as we go forward that we continue to watch the numbers. If you look over on the right-hand side, that's just one of the graphs that we've been graphing all the way since the beginning of this, just to keep an eye on things in all the immediate counties that we're in and nearby, so that we know how we can protect our people, we know the numbers in our area, and we know everything along those lines. So the important thing here is that we still have to keep an eye on the numbers. You've probably seen, I think I heard, I don't know the exact number, but it was around 20 states had seen their highest number of cases in the last week. So after we reopened, we actually went back to a situation where we were getting more of the virus in. Just on a personal note, we booked a trip to Florida last week and we canceled it this week. Because it just happened that fast that Miami became a hotbed and the Florida Keys started requiring face masks for everybody through June of 2021, keep in mind, for the entire next year. So it's happening and changing that fast around us. What's really important is that we all find a current trusted source of the numbers. I'm actually using Illinois University, where they've been tracking some of the numbers, and I've been keeping consistent with that source all the way through to make sure that we're keeping track of that. And we're reporting these numbers weekly to all of our people so that they realize what they're up against and what they're seeing. And we're also making sure that we're sharing everything that we know about reopenings and schedules and everything along those lines, just to keep everybody safe. So unfortunately, being an election year, the politics are exacerbating the situation here. We're seeing fights against Democrats and Republicans. We're not going to get into that, but we are seeing that is causing a little bit of uncertainty and a little bit of just a little confusion, quite honestly, in the whole situation. We're also seeing that the numbers are being skewed by the new testing. So there wasn't as much testing going on at the beginning of it. There's more testing going on now. So we are seeing that, we're getting a more real reading on what's going on right now, rather than what we were seeing before. And then many of you have heard that the death counts are being skewed. If I go to the hospital and I die of a heart attack, but I am tested positive for COVID, then it's being reported as a COVID death. I talked with a couple of doctors and they explained that is because there are different insurance considerations for that. So some of those deaths are being reported as COVID deaths when they might not have been. So those numbers are being skewed just a little bit. So what's important to know is that if there is a second wave, it's probably going to look a whole lot like the first wave. There's going to be customer uncertainty around what's going on. There's probably going to be reluctance for capital expenditures. They're going to be either holding back or not paying invoices. And then employees are, of course, reluctant to physically come into work. So the old adage, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. What we're going to talk about today is that fool me twice aspect, and make sure that we don't get fooled twice or run into a situation where we're caught off guard again, like we were possibly in early March. So Michael, back to you, please.
Tom, I really love the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. That really, I do think, represents the mindset we've got to take on what we can control as business owners. So moving to our next slide, what's the economic recovery curve look like? And this is a curve that is the best case scenario for any business. It kind of follows the hammer. This hit us. We had resolved to address the immediate situation with our workforce and our customers and partners, move into resistance, building up some resistance to this. So cash flow and broader survival issues came into play. People are, for the most part, gone through that phase, and now they're into this, what's the plan to bring the business back to scale? And that means adapt. I'm kind of like the guy saying, why do we keep saying the new normal? Because we can't really figure out what the new normal is right now. It's going to be constantly shifting. It's a shape-shifting environment we're moving in, and a lot of it is dependent on these assumptions right up here at the top, out of our control. But what we can control is what's going on in our business. We are experts at that, and we can adapt and be agile in adapting to that. Sometime post-dance, there's going to be a lot of consolidation. So that's where we're going. In a general macro kind of point of view. Now, Kelly Huber is joining us from CMA, and she'll tell us a little bit about her firm, I'm sure. But in this environment, we said, what are the tips about leading? Leading is different and changing and evolving right now. And Kelly has a number of suggestions here, and she's going to run through this. Kelly, give a brief introduction, tell us about your company, and run us through what people need to be thinking about and taking into account as they lead.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks for having me. My name, again, it's Kelly Huber. I am an organizational psychologist with CMA. We are a firm of psychologists who support organizations in building effective, psychologically healthy workplaces. So I thought today it would be helpful to share some tips, grounded in psychological research to help you as you think about leading in this next phase of COVID. So, we're in this really interesting moment where we're shifting a bit from crisis mode to more of this chronic phase, right? Where, we were running on a high amount of energy, investing a lot of adrenaline in that crisis phase, where now a lot of folks were finding that's really worn on them. And they're entering this more chronic phase, feeling pretty emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted. So if you're a leader in that category, know you're not alone. And I just want to encourage, you're thinking about, the logistics of bringing folks back to work, you're thinking about planning for folks' physical safety, that you're also thinking about and emphasizing just as much the psychological health of your organization. And that starts with, as a leader, your own self-care. So I want to make sure that you're slowing down to take care of yourself through this challenging time, remembering that, self-care is not self-indulgent, but it benefits your team. You are able to show up as a better leader. And it also is a role model, you serve as a role model for your team to know it's okay to take care of themselves. Some tips around taking care of your team through this season, remember that though it's a little bit of a less intense season for many, that your employees, what we're finding, they're still experiencing a heightened level of stress and anxiety than typical. And what we know is when folks are in that state, they have a harder time bringing their best selves to work. So the more you can be helping folks through that stress, the better. The first place I would start is with a good dose of empathy. So making sure you're checking in with your team, asking how they're doing, normalizing the stress that they're feeling. That helps alleviate some of it. And then helping them manage it actively. One of the best ways that we can manage stress is through relationships. So as a manager, the more you can be facilitating social connection. So that might be on Zoom team meetings. Maybe we don't jump straight into the agenda, but we take a little bit of time to connect informally. Maybe we keep up those virtual happy hours. The other thing here is that uncertainty is really stressful, really anxiety provoking. So the more you can keep up that consistent communication and keep folks well informed, helps assuage some of that anxiety. The more as a leader you can ask the question, how can I help? It's a really rare but powerful question to be asking in group settings and one-on-ones. It makes it safe for folks to ask for support if they're struggling. And the last thing I'd point out here, feelings of a lack of control are really stressful. We're in a season of we're unable to predict a lot. So the more you can be helping your teams manage boundaries. So right now, with a lot of folks working from home, the boundaries are pretty blurred. So the more you can be supporting your team and practicing that healthy work-life balance can help them gain a sense of control. And then, the basics around making sure your team has the structure they need, they have goal clarity, clarity of mission. We have to be a little bit more intentional about those things when we're leading from afar. The other section here, we could spend a lot more time than we have here on this topic, but as you're weighing future work arrangements, so that looks like when to bring folks back to work, how to bring them back to work, and how you might update your remote work policy. Some general tips grounded in research. The more you can take an individualized approach, we find that can be really helpful. That doesn't work for every industry, of course, but if you are in knowledge work, service work, tends to be a bit more conducive to this, with the idea that folks are in different ends of the spectrum in terms of how comfortable they are coming back. Some are pretty uncomfortable in light of the continued risk. Others are, maybe eager to find some sense of normalcy. So the more you can offer within reason flexibility around how and when folks come back to work, we find that can be really helpful. Also to that end, the more as you're shaping that return to work strategy, the more you can be seeking out feedback and input from your team to help you shape that. That can be really helpful. As we know, the more folks participate in decisions about their space, the more likely, they're to be psychologically comfortable with it, with the outcome on the back end. And then, the other piece here, again, we could spend a lot of time on this topic, but a lot of folks we're hearing are considering what does remote work look like in the future? We've liked a lot of what we've seen in this season, and might we continue some of it? So I would encourage, if you haven't already, to look into the research on telecommuting. There is an abundance out there that there's a lot of positive benefits around productivity, satisfaction, retention, commitment to the organization. And, the punchline of a lot of that research is that it doesn't have to be an all or none scenario. So, often a more moderate amount of telecommuting can be helpful, with the rationale that you get the best of both worlds, where folks can get flexibility in working from home at times. They can focus on maybe more complex tasks, while at the same time, they also get to go into work, collaborate, share ideas at the water cooler, continue to nourish that strong culture. So a lot of great research there that I would encourage you to check out. And the last thing I'd note there is that this is becoming an increasingly important, recruitment and retention tool. So as a lot of employees are getting a taste of this, you might start to see that they're going to be asking for more of it. And then the last thing there, just note, as you're a leader managing these challenges, when we are stressed, what we know is that our focus can tend to really narrow. So the more that you can be thinking about how to find that 20,000-foot view to gain some perspective can be really helpful. These are some helpful tips from an organizational psychologist, Adam Grant. He talks about practicing mental time travel, which looks like going back in the past to think about prior challenges. So if you've gone through 2008, try to think about what were the strategies you used to get through that season, and even share those with some of your team members who maybe didn't go through that crisis. It can be really powerful he also suggests doing more of a future focus, where you think about, okay, at a year from now, where do I want to be on an individual level? Where do I want to be at an organizational level? And related to that, there's this great concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. A lot of us have heard of post-traumatic stress, but there's also this concept where after crisis, after trauma, a lot of folks end up in a better scenario on that back end than they were prior to it, with the idea that, you know, I wouldn't have wished this on anyone, but in light of the fact that it happened, you know, I've been able to build some resiliency. Maybe I found a new sense of personal meaning. Maybe I've deepened some relationships on an individual level. You can also do that same exercise on an organizational level to think about, you know, a year from now, in what ways are we going to have grown from this crisis? So that can be a helpful exercise to do, especially on the more challenging days. So
Great.
with that, I'll pause, and hopefully these were some helpful tips.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Really appreciate it. The one thing I've really learned and stressing with my clients is that the social aspects of work that build teamwork, you know, a lot of them have disappeared in the remote environment, and you have to be intentional about creating those things. Create the water cooler conversations that really help people cope with things and get to know their teammates. That doesn't happen anymore. You've got to force those to happen. So let's move on. Thank you, Kelly. We're going to move on to the next slide. This is a slide that kind of reinforces what individual company recovery shapes are going to look like. And they're using large companies in this picture as kind of examples to help us think through what the shape of your recovery is going to be. We've talked to our Australian and Kiwi coaches, and they're seeing this is exactly what's happening with their clients. The immediate growth curve, as you can imagine, Zoom, their business has taken through the ceiling, but it's not without its challenges. And I'm just going to present one. I sent in a ticket for some help. About April 24th, I got the email back confirming that I got this 2 weeks ago. Okay, so it's they're struggling with some things in this growth too. The V-shape Netflix, people think, oh, Netflix went through the ceiling. Well, not immediately. They went down and then went up. And they're better than they were, but they're not. They're also in this flat plane shortly, and so there's a V shape, quick down, quick up, and there's struggles with that. The U shape, Home Depot or Lowe's might be a good example, as things have slowly gone down and things are going to come back, but there's going to be a flat period of time, and that's as Home Depot is figuring this out and consumers are figuring this out, but there's optimism because the do-it-yourselfers home improvement time is increasing. And then finally, there's going to be some businesses that they just need to mothball the business or put their business in cold storage for a while as they continue to figure out, and the economy and their customers start figuring out what's going on. Now, I want to share briefly some things that we have learned at Gravitas about how to go about thinking through what to do in your curve. So there are some foundational things to your business that you need to go back to and make sure these are strong. And two of them fall in the leadership bucket. You know, is the executive team strong? Do they have trust, commitment, and accountability? And then are you having enough regularly review strategy meetings? And regularly means weekly at least. And then talent. In the talent area, are you really reinforcing your core purpose, core values clearly so that people can work on their own and remotely? This becomes more important in remote. Third, profitability, really looking at your internal cash flow and measuring it and systematically optimizing it. And then finally, doing some profitability analysis on the different parts of your business, the different product lines you have, and make sure you're focusing on this. This is the foundational things our coaches are finding answers for their clients with. But there's another set. Let me get to that slide. The Agile type things, because the foundational is core and long-term, but there's things you have to do to become agile. And 3 of these fall in the strategy bucket. You know, we're finding that our clients did not have a good competitive landscape map so that they could figure out their differentiators. That's important to dig into this. Their core economic engine is really clearly identified, so they're working on clients that deliver the most value, and they're doing a regular strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats matrix, not just every 6 months or every quarter. They might even be doing it every month. And then 2 things in the customer area, really digging into this core customer profile and their persona of the customer so that you can create a measurable value proposition or brand promise. And then really focusing on the customer experience, because customers have choices now more than they did before. And we can't afford to lose customers. So you really got to dig into what is the experience they have doing business with you and obtaining your great product or service. So the next slide, again, review of the shapes. And now we're going to jump into some case studies from Australia and then match up some case studies from the people, our panelists, to a couple of them to make these more real for you, that this isn't something that's just happening down under, it's happening right here in your market. So the immediate growth curve, this is a company in Melbourne. It's a quarry and landscape material supplier. And they have 2 parts of their business, and they've been focused primarily on commercial and residential construction businesses and providing their materials there. But they also, is kind of an add-on, have been doing for time, because they have the stuff, they sell landscaping supplies. They haven't focused on it. Well, their business in commercial and residential construction has stayed strong, but home improvements and landscaping supplies to the do-it-yourselfers has taken off like nobody's business. And they've got some challenges related to this, even though the growth line looks fabulous. So take a look at the foundational things, and what we've asked our clients to do is to try to do a stoplight analysis of your executive team health, team reviews, and give yourself the green, yellow, or red light analysis. Don't need to go much further than that, but really question yourself on how well you're doing this. And this particular company realized that there's a gap in their leadership capability, and they've put a new executive in place to pay attention to this growth of the landscaping business while they still can work on the commercial and residential construction. They moved to weekly focus meetings with the executive team. They thought they were yellow on that. They've moved to weekly executive team meetings. They were strong on core purpose and cash flow. They've always been strong, but they had really never done a profitability review comparing types of projects and their new retail-oriented business. So they're working on that, and they're finding answers. On the Agile things, they actually dug in and realized they did not understand the competition. You know, the landscaping supplies portion of the business was just something they did because they had the stuff. They didn't know how they stacked up. They're spending time on that. They know their economic engine. They're doing regular SWATs once a month. Their core customer, they understand it for both businesses now, but they're working on changing the core customer experience, especially for the do-it-yourselfers. So that's kind of the immediate growth curve in we're trying to give you an idea of what to work on, what the challenges are going to be, but where to dig in and find the challenges or address the challenges. This is the V-shaped curve. This is an education lead generation company. They had a major drop within the first 2 weeks of COVID, followed by successive subsequent weeks of all-time records and more business than they've had. They had fortunately done a strategic plan right before COVID hit, so they were pretty activated for success. But they also went through this foundational and Agile Accelerator thing and found a couple weaknesses on the executive team health. This was a blind spot, so they're digging in there and making sure the team is working together well. And then this profitability review, they had just kind of ignored it over the years. They're working on it. And the big red spot was they did not have a landscape, a market map that says this is what's different between us and them. And that was a big deal. So if they're going to keep this V going up, and they want to, and they don't want it to flatten out, boy, they've got to work on this market map. Now, let's just not take the Aussies' words for this, okay? We've asked Brandon Dempsey of Go Brand Go, business owner, executive, who he's kind of going through the V curve in his company. And we've asked, he's got some bullet points here. So Brandon, can you take the stage and walk through the challenges you have been facing, both positive and negative, as you've moved into the V curve?
Thanks, Michael. So some of that I thought was very interesting. You talked about the first 2 weeks. So the first 2 weeks we worked with 3 of our clients to draw down their retainers to 25% billing of what they were. They happen to be our 3 largest clients, so that impacted our cash flow pretty heavily for at the time, April, May, and June. After about 2 weeks of kind of just like, holy crap, what is going to happen to our business? We kind of turned to more of an offensive stance and said, okay, what can we do to try and grow out of this? And we just started getting on the phone, trying to call. We've shifted it largely to plastics, business to government type companies, and said, okay, how can we just start working our network to just get more sales conversations? What we found is that prospects were more willing to take calls and talk to new ideas. So I had several presidents of companies there was one I was in Nashville to Portland, Oregon, to all over, who said, yeah, I've got time to take the call today. Normally this is not a call I would take, but now I've got time. And we've parlayed that into now selling more new clients during COVID, during quarantine, than we did in all of 2019. Which has my leadership team asking me, what the hell were you doing in 2019, Brandon? But that being said, we are experiencing, we had that 2-week lull, and then now we've had that massive spike up from a new business standpoint. So both in revenue and number of new clients sold, we've already surpassed 2019. So the team has been very focused on, how do we secure our existing business? And so right as things hit, we said, all right, we need to focus on getting good quality content out to our clients from a marketing standpoint about how to communicate with their customers, as well as how to communicate to their internal employees. And then we've been doing as best we can to lead clients and say, okay, how can we get out and stay out in front of this with your clients? While at the same time, I've been focused on bringing more net new opportunities in. We have also hired 3 people, and what we found that the talent right now out there is just amazing talent. And so there's like, unemployment's high, but the talent, the applications we're getting, we hired a new operations manager, and we had 250 applications in the first week for an operations manager. And these people are like, holy cow, just incredibly talented people. So that has brought with it some stress, however, to our team, because here I've got a team that's trying to manage existing clients, make sure we don't lose. They're also having to onboard new clients in a remote setting when all of our systems have been, how do you onboard clients in a face-to-face type of interaction? And if you would have asked me 6 months ago, could you ever do a kickoff with a client virtually? I would have told you, no, we've got to be in person. And now we've done 10 new kickoffs. Actually, I take that back. We've done 9 new kickoffs with clients. I have a 10th new kickoff with a client this afternoon. it'll be a 3-hour Zoom kickoff. So this has totally opened up now how we service our clients, and it's saving us money on travel, and should help fill, from a profitability standpoint, that gap we had for those 3 months being down. And then lastly, that client onboarding is becoming, again, we built it largely off in-person interactions. And so we're now having to onboard people remotely. And so that's presenting a whole new host of challenges, and how do we bring them into our culture and get them to understand our mission, vision, and values. And so we've come up with some different ways of doing virtual happy hours, of lunches, of having them meet different team members, of having them watch recorded videos now, kick off with clients, and watch recorded videos of team interactions with clients, so that they can start to see the culture and understand the culture. So we just had to change our onboarding process for our new employees. But we're finding that there's a lot of things that we're implementing that we're like, hey, this is actually a much better way to do it. Virtual kickoff, some of the virtual onboard, like, this is a better way to do it than we were doing it before. And I think that there's a lot of lessons learned that are going to stay with us for a while. Back to you, Sink.
Okay, I do have a quick question. You talked about the stressors on your managing existing clients and the staff and the stressors. What can you give us a little more about what you did to help them manage the stress?
So, well, first, we've got a lot of our employees who have young kids. And so a big part of that stress was being a teacher, and trying to be a worker. And our clients have been extremely understanding from a scheduling standpoint of rescheduling when those meetings are available. And also, we've been taking turns going into the office. So for instance, with this client kickoff, I will be in the office today and I'll run the meeting so there are no distractions. And if one of our team members has to step out to deal with a kid or has to deal with something, I can carry the meeting. And so we have generally one person who can carry the meeting, and then all those meetings are recorded. So if something happens for that person, they can come back and watch it and see it. So that's like one example. Another example is we're looking at from a time off standpoint. We've had one employee have a child. We have another employee who's due in 3 weeks. And there's a lot of discussions about how do we cover for that employee and give them the space they need to be on paternity leave, and now coming up on maternity leave. And so the team we're working on is, okay, how can different team members plug different gaps for people to help fill that workload?
Great. Thanks, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move to the next slide here. This is the U-shaped curve, and this is a commercial property finance company, and they're getting hit hard because there seems to a lot of deal flow has intensified while funding options have diminished. And that's just created a real pinch. There's people who want to do work, but they can't get the financing, and they really have to rejigger their policies. Now, I am not a finance guy, so some of this stuff is a little bit foreign to me. But on executive team health, they spent time on the structure and really figured out they had too many people on their executive teams without functions. And so they've cut that down. So the idea, they had to dig in and figure out what worked. They had been doing an average job of bringing that core value, cascading core purpose, core values, brand promise to the team. So the leadership team has focused on this big time. Cash flow was great, but the profitability mix has changed, and they're moving to higher risk product possibilities, and they're really digging in here on understanding profitability and deal flow. Their competitive landscape, I think a lot of people in this business, they don't look at competitors, and they've never put a market map down that showed competitors, who are the customers, who are the partners that they can work on, how do we get to them and be different and stand out. So they've really pushed on that. Their economic engine is ready. They've been doing SWOT regularly. They're going to do it every 2 months to make sure it's relevant, because things are changing. And that SWOT thing is a big deal. It's not like every month you have to go from scratch. You've just got to make sure that the SWOT you've done is valid, because the market is changing. Their core customer has changed. The same people, but why they're buying or investing in these deals is different reasons. than before. And I think that's something I want to encourage anyone in this U-shaped market is look at your core customer and that buyer persona type of thing. Because why they buy is changing. The stresses their customers are under is different than it was before. They have really worked on customer experience instead of deal making relationship. Now, you know, not to trust the Aussies about everything. I love them, but Dave Singer from Warehouse of Fixtures is going to talk about how he is addressing his U curve that he finds himself in. So, David, step up, please.
Well, the first way I've been addressing it is day drinking, but that was something I was doing well before COVID, so I really can't blame that. So Warehouse of Fixtures doesn't describe what we do. We sell new, used, and refurbished office furniture. And as you can imagine, in a time where people aren't going into the office, ours is not a hot commodity. So the good news about that is that our sales cycle is typically 3 to 6 months, which means that when things started to go bad in March, we knew that we would have strong revenue for at least 2 to 3 months before we really started to see the downturn hit us. So we are starting to see our downturn happen. Actually, it will start in July, and we expect to see a 60% decrease in revenue. But we had time to prepare. And what we did was we cut our expenses to manage towards forecasted revenue and managed our business for cash. And what that meant was that we went to the bank and we said, hey, I need you to extend our line of credit. We got our PPP on the first round. We were very proactive about that. We got our idle loan to make sure we had as much cash in the bank as possible. We also changed the way that we were budgeting. So whereas before we were budgeting on a 12-month cycle, now we're budgeting on a rolling 3-month cycle. And the reason that we're doing that is that we as a company, we can predict what's going to happen, but what's going on in both the economy and with COVID is way too fluid for us to predict over 3 months out with any degree of certainty. So we're really looking at things on a 3-month cycle. The next thing that we did is we're retooling. So we're building our company for the new market conditions. And basically what that means is that I don't want to be the best buggy whip maker. If what we're selling and what we're providing is not what people need, we need to move what we're selling and providing. So one of the things that we did to help our sales cycle, help increase sales, was focusing on efforts with digital and remote sales activities. I suspect one of the reasons that Brandon is doing so well, other than being a fantastic guy and a fantastic businessman, is that people like me are looking at the way that we're approaching our businesses and saying, hey, rather than getting rid of marketing dollars, what I need to be doing is shifting my marketing dollars into things that can reach people today. And that's training our sales folks to be better at Zoom calls and better on social media and better on the phone, and making sure that we are spending our money on pay-per-click and Facebook advertising and LinkedIn advertising and content creation, and providing more value to our clients and our prospects via digital means. The next thing that we did was we reviewed our team to ensure they had the right set of skills. If you're not really good at using the computer and you can't work from home, chances are you're not going to be really successful as a salesperson in this environment. And it's unfortunate, and under typical conditions, what we'd look to do is train our people towards the skills that we believe they need. Unfortunately, because this happened so quickly, we didn't have that we didn't have that luxury. So we had to change some of the people on our team around what we needed to see from our people. The last thing that we did was we tracked the new guidelines that were coming out in terms of office occupancy and what we were going to have to do for social distancing, so we could see what it was going to look like when people were coming back to work, to make sure the products that we were offering were solving the right problems. And one of the reasons that's really important for us in particular is that we buy used products. So we're basically making bets on what we think people will want moving forward. So whereas before we might buy a bunch of open concept office furniture, right now we are buying 0 open office concept furniture. They're having to pay us to haul it out, because my thought is that that furniture in the next 3, 6, 12 months is going to be basically useless, because people need barriers between people and they need distance between people. So the new thing, open concept, is dead, at least for now. The good news, we're all in this together, but we're not necessarily all coming out of this together. Did you guys hear about the 2 guys that were camping together? They were in a tent and they heard this bear outside, and the bear was grumbling and it sounded hungry and it was going through their stuff. And the one guy looks over at the other guy and he's putting on his running shoes and tying them up real tight. And the one guy says, "You're not going to outrun that bear. There's no way. Bears are super fast." And the other guy says, "I don't need to outrun the bear. I only need to outrun you." So the good thing about a downturn is that not everyone makes it out of it. And it's a sad thing to say, but business is a competitive game. And wanting to outlast your competition is a good thing. So we're in a fairly good position, even though I just told you our revenue next month is going to be at 40% of what it typically is, because our business has a really diverse client base. And when I say diverse, I mean we're diverse in terms of where our clients are, the types of clients we have, and the size of clients that we have. So imagine if you're in this situation and your largest client is Hertz or Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Those guys are in big trouble and they're downsizing in a huge way. So if you've devoted 20% or more of your business towards clients like that, you're going to be in big trouble and you're going to have to pivot really quickly. And it's probably going to be pretty hard right now to make that pivot. So I feel pretty good about where we are as a company, even though where we are as a company is not necessarily in the best place. The other good part for us is that our business is small and nimble. And we've been a fast growing company. So we grew from, I think 5 years ago, we were a $3 or $4 million company. And last year we were a $13 million company. This year we'll be a $10 million company, but what that meant is that our people are super used to change. Change is in our culture, because to grow that fast, you need to be able to adapt, and you're used to having to think on your feet. So I'm very confident that the structure of our company will be able to adapt and change with what's going on in the world. The other thing that I believe is going to make us very successful coming out of this is that our products are built to save clients money. You know, the first month or two, when March hit and then into April, I said, I'm not buying anything. I'm not buying any used furniture at all. And now the opportunities that are coming available in the market are so good that I can't, well, I could say no, but I I am unable to say no to these opportunities because I know that in the short term, the short term and the midterm, people are going to have to make changes to the way that they office. People that are in these open office environments, sure, I can sell them a sneeze guard right now, and that might work. That might help them. But in the long run, you're not going to want a bunch of plastic screens up that look cheap. These large companies are going to rethink their offices, and they're going to need cubicles again. We're going to have to move back to that degree of separation, and they're going to want to dip their toe in the water before they can jump in. So having product that they can do that with inexpensively to my business makes a lot of sense.
Okay. David, I love the thing that you said that I thought was the best piece of advice was shifting from a 12-month business plan to a 3-month rolling plan. You know, budgeting 3 months ahead, and it's always rolling and redoing it. I love that. And I think that's a good thing for anyone on this call to really take a look at. All right, we're going to move to the last L-shaped curve and move through this quickly and then try to pull it together. Let Tom Swip kind of pull together what we've learned. This is a company, video production. Nothing is happening in video production. Their clientele is figuring out how to do it themselves, and it's just dramatically changed, and they've made the decision to hibernate. Doing their stoplight analysis, they're strong, and they're working on maintaining strong team health reviews, all this stuff. In the foundational, though, it's this understanding profitability and record flow. They've got to work at this, and they're already working at a new business model, whereas they've always, collected at the end of the development of the videos that they do. They're changing their model. The big thing, and what I noticed, and hopefully you notice on all the profiles here, is this one thing in Agile Accelerator, and as I'm listening to David talk and I'm listening to Brandon talk, they're adapting to this competitive landscape map. What's the market map look like? Every one of these companies from down under, this was something they weren't doing. Drawing out that big market map that shows who's in the arena with you and why they're successful and how they're getting to clients. And it's made a big difference. These guys are figuring this out for the first time. And they're also focusing on this customer experience stuff. They're just going to hold on for a while. They're going to come back to the SWOT another time. We don't have a local example of this. So we're going to move on, and Tom Swip's going to take the stage. He talked earlier, but he's going to try to summarize some of the specific findings that we've talked about so far in our webinar. We're on the home stretch here. We're going to run over a little bit early. Kelly, I know you have to leave, but hang in there if you can, people.
All right, guys. So thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. So we'll do a quick speed round here, guys. Just to share, we are a U-shaped curve. So we're software development folks, and we are in that U shape. I do want to bring it back to that point that we made earlier. We want to focus on how you're going to come back stronger than before the virus. So let's talk about a few of those things. So number one, Kelly touched on this earlier, continue to check on your people frequently. So the uncertainty is killing all of us. The unknown is killing all of us. Suicides are up significantly. People are feeling isolated and alone. We need to be asking questions about how are you feeling, or how can I help you? The people are feeling cut off, cabin fever is more than set in. People are either burning out or they're already burned out and they're afraid to go back. One suggestion I heard was to hold an Ask Me Anything session, which, just open-ended, what would you like to know? At SWIP, just as an example, we're trying to do fun openers with all of our virtual meetings. So asking questions and going around, what was your first concert? What was your first car? One of them was, if you were sitting in the woods, or if you could sit in the woods with someone that you never spoke to before, who would that individual be? So you learn a lot of fun things about the people as you do it. Next, we want to make sure that we continue to use the downtime to work on the business. So this is one way of keeping people engaged. Some examples that I've seen are routine maintenance on equipment, cross-training staff, cleaning up. We just cleaned out our server room and donated a pickup truckload of used hardware to the Boy Scouts where they can all dismantle it, learn about computers, go out and make some money. So just finding good ways to use the time. You've got to continue to make sure that you build relationships and take time to build those relationships. They're so critical during this time so that other people know that you're there. We want to make sure we're preparing our processes and systems for the business, the work upswing or a resurgent. At SWIP, one of the things that we did was we went back and we made a list of 70 items that we needed to work on, anything from rebuilding our website to creating an estimating tool to cleaning out the server room that I mentioned. So it's just taking time to work on the business. There was an old saying that was at Sbarro's Pizza. It was, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. So if you have time to lean on a counter, you've got time to be cleaning up around you. So think along those lines. Very important, we have to look for bottleneck processes and systems. We got to look at manual processes that are using paper or maybe standard words, Excel spreadsheets. Those are the things that are bottlenecking us. And we got to establish a team to make sure that we're looking at those things to make sure that if this does happen again, that we're not going to run into the same situation. We need to look at the technology. What are you missing? Are you missing virtual meeting software, work visualization software? At SWIP, we were missing a good whiteboard tool that we would use on the web, so we implemented one of those. Think about things like increased bandwidth. What cloud services should I be using? Believe it or not, smartphones are not as relevant as they were before. Tablets and laptops and cameras, those are the things that are more critical right now that we look at. Thin clients offer an inexpensive for supporting remote workers. Does it make sense to have night workers? A lot of companies, service companies are turning away from in-person and turning to virtual services. We need to be looking at things along those lines. We also talked a little bit earlier about upgrading your team. This is an employer market right now. So, but do keep in mind that the first people that probably were to be let go were the people that needed to be let go anyway. So make sure that you're swapping out your B players for A players, but being very careful about who it is that you're managing. Continue to watch their cash flow. If you don't have a cash flow burn down chart, create one right away and know how much runway you have, how much bandwidth you have to do that. Double down on marketing, making sure that you're not cutting costs in the areas where it's most critical for your business success right now. And then just two more quick things, get out of your...
Reiterate that one again real quick, if you would.
Yeah, double down on marketing. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Tom.
And get out of your own head. So just the fact that you're in this webinar this morning and listening, it makes it seem as though you are getting out of your own head and you're thinking about what you should be doing. So make sure you're talking with other business owners. Don't take in too much social media. That is poison to your monkey brain. Social media news, it will just bring you down a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. And then I like to say to reimagine your next normal, not your new normal, but develop several options of what your next normal looks like. Invest thoughtfully on how you show up there. And then we have seen that experience from prior crises has shown that companies that maintain and invest are able to bounce back stronger. So final point, never waste a good crisis. You want to be able to learn from this, grow from this, and use it to become the next version of yourself and take your company to the next version of itself as this whole thing unfolds. End of the speed round. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Tom. Good information. This slide itself is very helpful. I want to assure everyone who's on the webinar and all those that registered will be getting this set of slides in a PDF sent out shortly after this is over. We're pretty much done with our workshop, covered a lot of ground, no time for questions. You know, a little bit more about rock and sand. You know, first, you know, I'm pivoting. I'm adopting a pay what you can afford coaching model. Let's have a conversation about what you need to deal with, figure out and fix, and how your cash runway looks. Then we figure out how to achieve some value. What's the value, the impact, and then let's agree and go forward based on what's affordable and what we can accomplish. And these are ways to reach me. And I'm good at helping people get out of their head and sort out these new things that are in front of them. Finally, Here's our sponsors, our members of the TEI group of St. Louis, the President's Forum of St. Louis.
And I'll jump in just real quick. Thanks again to everybody for that. And then Mike, if you could hit that last slide for me just here real super quick. There we go. All of the panelists can be contacted at this link below. And in addition to that, all of the other folks on the previous slide, we have relationships with individuals at each one of those firms. They can all be found at this link as well. If you want a personal introduction to any of them, please reach out to me. Happy to do it. I know all of these folks very well and feel very comfortable putting you in touch with just any one of them. So thanks, Mike. Thanks to the panelists. I appreciate everybody sticking with us. Mike, any closing thoughts? If not, we'll thank everybody for being here.
Yeah, the big thing that jumps out at me is getting a handle on the market map of the market you're going to be moving in is a big deal to your success. Other than that, my comment that I'm saying to everyone is be safe, or stay safe, be well, do good work. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.